welcome to episode 8 in season 3 of C.A.R.s, Coffee and Christ, and it's our weekly podcast here at Automotive Royale, and we're located in Mounds, Oklahoma, right outside the Tulsa Metroplex in Oklahoma. And I am your host, as always, Ross Turner, and I'm the corporate chaplain here at C.A.R. And I have the pleasure of getting to be with Abigail King, who's our co-founder, co-owner, and our COO in our business here today. And I appreciate being with us, Abby. Thank you so much for joining us. And we've been doing a several kind of series over this season, one of which has been talking about what we value as a company and our core values, we call them. And we've done 2 of those so far. And this is our kind of our third discussion, a topic that focuses on the importance of excellence and what does it mean to be excellent. So I've got some questions we could talk about today, Abby. And I think the first one is just defining what it is, then defining it, why, or kind of in a way defending why we believe it to be this definition of it. And then lastly, what are some pitfalls to kind of avoid with such a pursuit of excellence and having a high standard for excellence? There are some pitfalls we kind of want to avoid, I think, about that. So I thought we could just start with a simple question of defining it. How would you define excellence, maybe in your own life, your own perspectives, and what do you think it takes to then achieve that kind of excellence in your own thought? And I can just obviously share my own as well. So what do you think? How would you define it? And what do you think, or has it taken to achieve that?
Yeah. Well, when you think of the word excellence, I mean, that word alone is it's not just good.
Yeah.
It's kind of better than good. It is your best.
Yeah.
Right? And so when we operate in excellence, it's what are we putting out there that is our best?
Yeah.
What is the best of our ability? And are we doing things subpar? Or are we doing things in excellence? Are we doing things to just squeak by?
Yeah.
Or are we doing things to make something better than either what we left it or putting something great out in the world? I think for me, and how we see ourselves as a business, is that we want to operate in excellence because it is a reflection of who we are, and it is a way for us to show others that relationship that we have with Christ as well. It's we operate in excellence, and hopefully people see a difference between us and anybody else, and then hopefully connect the dots of, oh, well, they're also believers, and hey, is that maybe why they're wanting to go above and beyond?
Yeah, I think it's fantastic, because I do think that there is a difference on what people think is the best, right? Everyone, has these debates about things being the best, and then it's like, what's the reasoning or the motivation behind why they want to be the best? Obviously, there's different motivations, but I think just when it comes to not high money based endeavors, like normal white collar work or blue collar work that's not like high athletic achievement based kind of stuff. You think, well, what's the motivation? If it's not ultimately money, why do they want to be the best? Is it just for notoriety? Is it something more? And typically there's something that people always want to know, what's behind all that? What's the drive behind that? Well, in your experience, kind of wanting to be and do a good job and having kind of the best output, what has been your thoughts about what it takes to achieve that?
Well, it takes a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
I think it takes sometimes doing things that you don't want to do.
Yeah.
Do I want to sacrifice the time?
Yeah.
Do I want to sacrifice finances sometimes? And I think having that extrinsic motivation is helpful, because if I'm just looking at my past, I was always the kid that did really well in school, and it was always out of fear of disappointing my parents. Maybe it was because I wanted to appear very smart to my peers. It was all, kind of vain or fear-based. And so when you operate in that regard, you're left with a lot of disappointment if you don't meet those expectations, or a lot of shame or embarrassment.
Yeah.
So it is important what the motivation is. When the motivation is, hey, I want to do this because I want to do everything unto the Lord.
Yeah.
Well, then I'm answering to somebody else, not myself.
That's right.
Which in some cases can,
Yeah.
like you can't have that, the same results. You can end up feeling like, oh, maybe I disappointed God, or I'm embarrassed because I didn't meet those expectations, or whatever. But I don't think that those are put on me from Him. Even if I feel those same things, with my goal being to please Him, if I'm feeling those things, it's not from Him.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I love how you said, one, it's hard work and a lot of decisions that you make that are not convenient, not easy, are not like always the most direct, obvious step, but a lot of it's kind of figuring out a way, but putting a lot of time in. I thought that's a really good way of thinking about excellence. I saw just the other day, I'm a big sports enthusiast myself, and I saw, there's an ongoing debate about who's the greatest basketball player of all time. It's been going on for years, and it's between three players: Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, and LeBron James. And LeBron James was asked recently, when are you going to retire? And he's been asked that for like the last 10 years because he's been in the league so long. And the reporter asked, do you believe that you were the greatest? And he said, I think everyone who's a great player probably thinks that. I certainly think I am the greatest. And then you think that sounds braggadocious. It's actually not. And then he described what his standard of excellence was to continue to play. I thought it was really interesting. He then said, the way I define if I'm going to play anymore is if I'm willing to get to my game 5.5 hours early to prepare, like I always have, and get to my practice 2.5 hours before to prepare, like I always have. If that doesn't happen, then I'm stealing from people. I thought it was a really fascinating way of thinking what his standard of excellence was compared to most of the people.
Right.
And his standard of excellence was so much greater. So it's not being braggadocious. It's like he's put in the work to be the best, to be the most excellent. He's got the most points of all time. He's played the most seasons of all time. He's got 4 championships, et cetera, et cetera. So the reality is like there seems to be something measurable about excellence. And there seems to be something that's like reasonable of like what's expected in excellence too. So you can in a way define it, and there is a sacrifice that goes into it that's measurable to some level. But I think there's a difference though in the way we go about it and the reasoning, like you said, that we kind of go about it. And I thought we would, it might be good to say, what's our reason we should give our best, and what's the payoff for us? In a non-Christian environment, the payoff is maybe fame, maybe finances, maybe greatness in the sense of approval. What's the motivation for us to pursue excellence, and what's the payoff in your thought?
I think some of it is more on a personal level of being able to sleep at night.
Yeah.
Right there. I mean, depending on the situation, you can phone it in. You can say, okay, well, I'm not going to work late. I'm not going to do X, Y, and Z, even though I know that if I did, then this would happen.
Yeah.
But I think, especially like as a mother and as I work outside the home, you kind of have to balance things.
Yeah.
It's okay, well, if I'm only looking at being the most excellent COO, and then I sacrifice certain things that would help me be a more excellent mother, well, then is that worth the COO aspect? Or, are there sacrifices that have to be made on the family end in order to have excellence in other areas. And I know that there's like give and take in all areas of your life, and you need to be well balanced and everything. But
Yeah.
I think that there are times that you do have to choose.
Mm-hmm.
And some of those choices, the choice that I would make to, not work all hours of the night in order to be there with my family. Well, that doesn't mean that that's a bad sacrifice on the work end, because it is a good decision on the family end. So I think you kind of have to look at the whole picture when it comes to your reasoning behind not, doing your best and defining what is your best, like you were saying.
Yeah. I think one, figuring out what that definition is, and figuring out what it's going to cost to achieve that excellence, but then also searching yourself to know what the motivations really are and what you're really going. I love how you said having the whole picture in view is very important, because that helps you have a proper motivation. Ultimately, it's like, am I doing this for me or for more than me? And if the answer is more than me, it's typically a healthier ambition, right? But then also the sense of saying, hey, what's the payoff so I can go to bed at night with a good conscience, right? That's an undervalued blessing in today's world, isn't it? And there's a payoff of, I did my best and I have a clean conscience about this, or I put my best foot forward, or I gave my all there, right? But also knowing like there's a balance to what's valuable in excellence. Like you said, a bigger picture. We'll get to that in a second. But I love how you said there's a bigger picture of like excellence in a general sense, not just in this one narrow thing. That's really good. Well, I thought we'd read kind of our own definition of our company, because I think it's a really good definition of what we think is excellence, and talk a little about why there's three particular parts of that, and why that kind of makes the three legs of a stool, so that we can kind of sit on it and feel good about that. So the way that we've discussed our definition of excellence and identified it is this. It says, employees will pursue excellence in their work, which means attention to detail, which we mean by process. It's also an eye to the big picture, which is the product we have. But additionally, our excellent work will be accompanied by an excellent attitude. So it's a focus on process, product, and attitude. So let's take those first two together, then we'll get to the last one there, because I think those are all important. So product and process, or we could say effort and outcome, different ways of thinking about it. But why should excellence include both of those things? Not just what we're trying to get out the door. We're just kind of getting lost in detail or something. Why does it involve both? To have an excellent attitude, excellence about both process and product, about the whole thing, the whole piece. Why is that important to us for excellence? Why would we include both of those things?
Well, I think just as a businesses, you need to make money, or else it's just a hobby.
That's right.
That is expensive. And so you have to have a good product that people will, in return, give you money.
Yeah.
So if you don't have an excellent product, people aren't going to want to give you their money for that product. The process helps with that. I think it helps with the entire environment when you're at work, because then it's not just looking at the customer, but then when you're looking at the process, that's looking out for the team. How is their day-to-day going? How are they cooperating with each other? How are they communicating with everybody? Is it chaos in the bay, or is it not? Because there's some kind of process, right? Like when you're laying down paint, there's a process. You're not going to put, new paint on something that's totally messed up. You're going to fix everything first, then you're going to put paint on, then you're going to clear coat it, right? Like it would make no sense to have a backwards process. And so same as with engines and anything that you work on, there's a process, or else you're undoing work, you're having to redo work, you're making everybody around you frustrated, whatever it may be. like, so you're looking at your team in one aspect, you're looking at the customers in another aspect, I think.
Yeah, that's a great way of thinking it. It includes both the employees and the customer. I think that's why we phrased it that way, because if it's just trying to satisfy the customer, it loses the heart behind what we're trying to do. If it's just to satisfy our own itch and hobby, it doesn't really meet a need, per se. It might meet our own need, but it doesn't really create a business. Like you said, it's just a hobby. I've got a lot of hobbies that wouldn't be very profitable, right? I'm super niche in certain things, right? So there's a sense of like trying to aim for a target and being, broad enough to meet the need without it just being kind of about one particular kind of niche interest. But yeah, I think the process being included in that is that we're not trying to take shortcuts to a product or just rush something out the door or simply say, here you go, you can fix the kinks later, right? We're not trying to do kind of a haphazard way of approaching it, but we're also trying to keep on a timeline of some kind.
Right.
I think that's a challenge, in our experience here so far is, what it really takes to do something well without it just being, again, almost indulgent on how we try to make it perfect. I think there's a difference between excellence and perfection. But I think there's a sense of like, we want it to be with excellence, but at some point you got to get done.
Right.
So it's hard to kind of balance that. So in your experience, what's the difficulty there of trying to say we want an excellent process with an excellent product, but there's got to be some give and take.
Right.
So how would you define that? Because that's been our experience.
Yeah, it has. And I think having a goal in mind, right? Because if you have something open-ended, like especially with cars, you're always going to find something that you can work on.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
But if we take in mind like just my Jeep or Joshua's truck, right? Like we had a goal in mind of we wanted his vehicle to be an overlander. And so we knew XYZ, these are the things that we need. And yes, you could always add something. Yeah. And yes, that list grew over time a little bit. But at a point, we were like, okay, we've been working on it this long. This is what we've got. And this is good. Yeah. This is what we need. And, you've got to call it at some point. Yeah. Same as with mine. I was like, okay, well, these are the things that I know that I want. And when those things were done, we called it done. Yeah. And then it's, okay, well, if down the road you want to modify this or that, then you could do that as a one-off. But it's not a continual, I'm going to be working on this car every night for the next 5 months, because that's what can happen in restorations is, okay, well, I want this. Okay, well, instead of driver grade paint, I want to do show grade paint. Yeah. And then it's, okay, well, let me do this performance thing or let me change it. And you start doing things and changing things on a vehicle that are perfectly fine. Yeah. But it just grows and grows and grows. And so with our goal now, focusing on drivers, focusing on getting vehicles ready for people to buy and for them to be daily drivers instead of, trailer queens or just going to shows is when you're looking at, okay, what are you defining the vehicle as? Okay, well, if it's going to be a trailer queen, you're going to have a different definition and you could add all these things and the list will go on and on and on and the build will be forever long. Yeah. But if it's, okay, no, this is a daily driver. Okay, well then, is it reliable to drive? Does it look nice? It does not have to look perfect to fit the definition of a daily driver, right? But if there's damage, you fix it. If it's not reliable, you make it reliable, but you don't have to up the horsepower, right? If the brakes are working well, you don't need to upgrade them to, some super expensive brand of brakes. If the tires are in great condition, do you need to replace them? No. These are all things that, yes, you could do, but will it fit the definition of what you need on that project? Yeah. And so, if we've got the Humvee out there, okay, it's not going to have leather seats and power windows, right? Like, because it doesn't fit the build. Yeah. So I think that's a thing the definition,
of it.
Of what it is to you.
Yeah. And I love that, again, there's a lot of nuance to it because it is important to define it. Otherwise, it's kind of an immeasurable thing that doesn't really have a goal in mind. And then it either gets rushed in the product or it gets indulged in the process. And that can happen, I think, a lot unless there's a very clear standard of, hey, the product is meaning to reach this audience for this purpose. We're aiming for driver builds. We're not aiming for show builds. Like in our donation ministry that we want to develop, we're looking for just reliable, not breakable.
Right.
Right? Like, here you go, it's going to work for a week, right? We're going to give them something that hopefully will run for a few years. They have to start maintaining themselves.
Yes.
The goal is to have something that's drivable, not breakable. But for someone who's, gets a nice classic car, it's not show worthy, but it's drivable and usable, and it's meant for people to use it, not to kind of put it in their garage. So I think making sure that the process fits the product goal is a big part of defining excellence. And for us, it seems to be very focused on reliability, quality, not necessarily showy, right? And so I think that's where we say excellence for us is more functional, but reliable, I think. And I think that's a really good way of saying it. Last thing we put in there is that all of that's accompanied with an excellent attitude. And I think that's important for the internal part, right? It's not just the process of the vehicle and the work, but the people doing it. And we want to have an excellent attitude about us. I'm a preacher by trade and a pastor, day by day. And there's a lot of passages in the Bible that talk about how terrible the people of God are, and particularly about their attitudes. It says all over the place. It comes back up and up in the Bible over and over that the first generation of Israelites died in the wilderness because their attitudes were so poor. In fact, it says they grumbled so bad, God didn't let them in the promised land. So the attitude portion is a big part of how we go about all this. So it's a human component, I think, that we also want to be a part of the process and the product, right? We won't just be proud of like, well, we did this one well, but that one really poorly. We want to have an attitude of we want this to always be consistent. I had a friend the other day I was talking to that said, looked at a restaurant that was the last one of its kind in our city. And I worked for that chain for a number of years, almost about 2 decades ago. And he says, there's very few left, blah, 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 blah. And he says, if they only understand it works like that restaurant. And I said, well, those are different concepts, cost different amount of money, labors are different. The products are not as valuable today as they were 20 years ago. People don't want to eat at a sit down. They want to eat in a drive-thru. So it's not just simple like that. It does take a lot, but a lot of it is the customer experience of people's attitudes. And I would say certain brands have them better than others. And so I think for us, what are we looking for when it comes to the attitude of our employees, and why put that stress on them? Why can't they just be all out of sorts as they just get the job done? Why do we think that that's important too? What do you think, Abby?
Well, whenever you are thinking about attitudes, every attitude is contagious, whether it's a good attitude or a bad attitude, whether you are drama-filled or drama-free, it will be contagious. And we have to keep in mind the work environment for everybody. And not only that, but anybody that walks through the doors is going to be able to sense, what kind of environment this is. And I mean, we'll bring our kids here. We bring families here. People will bring their families here. And I don't want to have my kids around people that have horrible attitudes because I don't want my kids to have horrible attitudes, right? And if you ask most employees at any job, they're going to want a place that they're not dealing with drama. Right? That they're not having to sit and listen to someone complain all the time. Or, you want people that are going to be lifting each other up. You want people that you can look to as mentors. You want the more seasoned employees to want to teach those that don't have as much experience. And if you have a positive work environment, that's going to happen more often naturally than not, right? You've got a bad environment and you tell someone, oh, hey, I want you to mentor this person.
Yeah.
Like, are they going to grumble the whole time? Like, are they even going to be willing to do that? What kind of mentorship are they going to provide in that situation anyway, if they don't want to do it, if they're not willing to do it? And I mean, you spend so much of your time at work. You know, you're spending 40 plus hours in your workplace. You don't want it to be a miserable place.
No, I mean, we all think ideally like that would make any sense, but it does seem to be the common challenge for most people. No matter what they're getting paid or where they are, there's this kind of misery loves company thing or whatever. But we're saying that we hold a higher standard for how we engage our work and engage one another. So I think it's a pretty high standard.
Yeah.
Right? Because we're not saying, hey, you can act however you want.
Right.
And then do a good product. We think that that's not excellent, right? So I think there's an interesting, again, there's all sorts of leadership models out there, but people are seeing things differently today. I think more than ever before when it comes to this last piece is people say you might be the highest salesperson, but if you're a toxic employee, you're not doing a good job at all.
Right.
And I think that's a really good kind of going back the other way, a correction there, because again, we're not independent contractors most of the time. We're working with teams. In fact, I think the work environments are more team-based now than ever before because there's almost less corporateness in a sense because that's what they kind of fall away a little bit more. There's almost independent kind of entrepreneurship happening more now. But teams are still essential. And it's almost as if the attitude and the social etiquettes, as he calls soft skills, are needed more now than ever to learn to deliver something effectively. So we're saying excellence is process, product, and people. And those things all matter. There's a saying people like to say that it was made with love, I think that's what we're saying, right? We did it with love. We did it with an attitude of care. We did it with an attitude of excellence. We did it with an attitude that was appropriate to the process. I think that's a good thing that's appropriate if we want to kind of match it all up together. And, I think there's something wonderful about people that can express themselves well with control, but also self-control when things don't go well, and know that not everything's the worst it could be or the best, but there's kind of this evenness to their attitudes because, days come and go, thankfully. Right? So we kind of thought we'd finish by concluding about what are some pitfalls to avoid when let's say we achieve really good excellence. And I think that's something we should all be pursuing in whatever we're doing. As Christians, certainly says, do all things with excellence unto the Lord. I remember a really close friend of mine in college. I never thought about excellence a whole lot. I just thought about work, just working a lot. More quantity than quality, per se, is what I'm saying. And I remember him saying in college, this is a college student, by the way, as a Christian, he was saying, if you are going to class, you should expect yourself to get an A because you're a Christian. And I was like, whoa, what? And it was because he had a standard of excellence that wasn't this kind of self-righteous thing. It was more of, I want to show Christ in how I deliver my attention, my work. These things should reveal him to people. And that's obviously within your abilities as well. But he had a high ability. And I was really confronted with that. Like, am I giving my best for excellence purpose or just kind of being dutiful? And he challenged me that way. And I thought it was really helpful. But there are some ways that, let's say we're doing all that. And there can be some pitfalls to that kind of pursuit of excellence. And I think there's two things maybe that I thought we could identify before we finish. But the first one is what happens when we pursue excellence for its own sake. Proverbs 16:3 says, commit your works to the Lord and your plans will be established. So what happens when we commit ourselves to commitment? Or we try to achieve excellence for excellence? So what's the pitfall of doing that, Abby, in your thought? Because I've certainly been susceptible to that a lot in my life. Why does that fall short of really excellence in the purpose of it?
I think looking at achieving excellence, right? Like if you've defined that at some kind of benchmark, then you achieve that, you meet that benchmark, and you're kind of left with well, what next?
What next? Yeah.
What next?
Yeah.
Which kind of can leave you empty, especially if it's something that you've worked a lot of your life towards, right? Like I'm thinking you have Olympic medalists, right? Like since they were a kid, hoping to achieve this one thing. Well, what happens when you do?
That's right.
But you do another one? You try to do the same thing? And then how does that affect them?
Yeah.
Right? Their identity. If your identity is wrapped up in this one benchmark, then what? I think what also could happen is pride.
Yeah.
You end up getting that.
Yeah.
You hit that benchmark and you become pretty arrogant about it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what is the goal of being the greatest basketball player to ever live?
Yeah.
I mean, that could always be knocked down by somebody else at some point, right? So if that was the only goal that Michael Jordan ever had, that LeBron ever had, right? That Kobe ever had, like just that one thing is I have to be the best. Well,
what is there more to it than that, right?
Yeah, like there has to be.
There has to be.
Because like there will always be somebody better.
Yeah.
Right? I'm sure that's why there's that debate is because nobody knows for sure. It can't be clearly defined. If it was clearly defined, there wouldn't be that argument.
That's for sure.
Right? So what happens if you don't achieve it? How can you define it? Are you putting your whole identity in it? There's just so many, I think, more negatives than positives of just having that as your end goal. Yeah. It seems empty.
I think that's a really good way of just practically talking about the challenges and the pitfalls of that. And like I kind of talked before the podcast, I'd share a story that kind of, I think, illustrates that with another friend of mine, not as close as the last guy. He was in my really Christian circle of friends. The other guy was in my college with me. His father was the director of the whole music program. He was a kind of bigwig in school. And he was an exceptional player. I mean, the top of the top player in the state. Went on and is still there now to become a freelance trumpet player in New York City. And I mean, was part of a very gifted player. His father exemplified for him the pursuit of excellence. I mean, absolutely, the way his hair was combed, the way he pursued his posture, everything about him was that way. And I remember being in a class with him one time, and he just shared kind of honestly what was probably the deepest thing within his heart, that he just loved people that were excellent at things. That's what he said. He said, I appreciate no matter what it is, that people are excellent at things. I could tell that was who he was. That was really what he was doing it for. Everything he was doing it for, whether it was a trumpet thing or something else, was just this pursuit of excellence for its own sake. I don't think it was happenstance that he had a kind of a robotic personality in a way, because really that's it's not really a relational thing, it's like an artificial thing. Extremely gifted person, but he was doing his practice and his achievements for its own sake, really, and almost in a way he could have just traded it for something else, because really the goal wasn't the instrument, the joy of it, it was just the perfection of doing that thing or some other thing. And I thought it was interesting that kind of coincided with his somewhat robotic personality in a way. So I think in my own life there's some similarities to that, is that I think when you're pursuing excellence for its own sake, it gives way to perfectionism, I think. And that's really not what we're made for. I think we're made for a relationship, not for products or for even a process. And another thing I thought of one time is different sport here, but one of the greatest football players of all time, Tom Brady, after he won his 6th Super Bowl, he had this famous video in this interview where he says, "What else is there? Is there anything more than this?" because he realized how hollow that was, like you were saying. So excellence for its own sake leads, I think, to perfectionism, which is not the goal of any person. It's just a thing you're doing really, really well, but it's missing the point, I think. So maybe excellence for its own sake, it misses the point that people are in relationships with people, not just with products. It's that we are in a really messy world, and people are fragile and broken, and not everyone can do things well, right? And it kind of misses the point. So it falls short, I think, in that sense, though its pursuit is really worthwhile, I think. Maybe the second one might be good by kind of giving, maybe from the other side of it, kind of the same discussion, but from a different side. I thought I'd read from Genesis 2 and 3 about work and pursuing work. And this is what it says in Genesis 2, that God took the man and put him in the garden to work it and take care of it. To Adam he said, though, once Adam blew it, he says to him, Adam, because you listened to your wife and you ate the fruit from the tree which I commanded you not to eat, here it is, cursed is the ground that you will work. Through painful toil you will eat food from it, and it's going to produce thorns and thistles for you. So on one side, we should always remember that whatever we're doing with all our heart, it's a gift. But on the other side of it, we got to remember that same work we're doing, there's a curse associated with it. So if we give everything we have to it, like you said, we're creating a false identity, I think. So, I've certainly experienced that in ministry, where I think my identity is more as a pastor than as a person. I don't know what your experience is with it, Abby, but I think, it might be the false identity of just workaholism or something. I don't know. But there's this other side of pursuing with all your heart, maybe too narrowly, can lead to a false sense of identity, like you were saying.
I think with how I was raised, definitely having a strong work ethic was ingrained in me. To the point of having the mindset of, if I am not working, or if my hands are not constantly busy, there's this that very uncomfortable feeling.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Very uncomfortable feeling. And even when Joshua and I got married, and because I've been working since I was old enough to work, right? Like, if it was legal for me to have a job, I had a job.
Yeah.
And so when we got married and we discussed me just staying at home and not working, that was a very big transition. And it had a very big effect on who I thought I was, what I felt my worth was, because my worth, and how I would introduce myself to people. I mean, you could see, when you introduce yourself as, oh, I just stay at home, or I'm just a mom. That word "just" it automatically shows that you devalue whatever you're going to say next. And so it was a very big transition. I mean, years to feel like my identity wasn't wrapped up in what I was doing. And I think it's even still a struggle now, because that's commonly the first thing that anybody asks you when they meet you is, oh, what do you do? Right? And so even answering that question now, it's okay, well, what am I going to say? And how am I going to express myself to this person? And so wrapping that up and the work ethic and everything with that, and it being so ingrained, it's easy to make that your identity. So I think, like I said before, finding that balance of doing things in excellence, but having it point to somebody else, not having it point to me. And viewing it as, okay, well, taking a break and relaxing at some point in the day does not mean I'm lazy, right? And so it's like, what is going to make me the best this? What is going to make me be the best that? And operating in that realm.
It's some really great stuff, Abby, about saying the reality is this pursuit of excellence pointing away from me to something more than me. It's a really great way to avoid that first pitfall of perfectionism or just the excellence for its own sake problem. That we all fall into maybe ruts, but can certainly get into a pattern that's fairly dangerous in a way of misusing that. And I think the second part, like you're saying, is so good of kind of miscasting what it's really about. There's something more than the thing we're doing that it's pointing to, right? And like all those things athletes are saying, like, I did the thing, I'm hollow now.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, it's really true. And then, like, I guess I need to do it again to maybe figure out if it's the thing I'm looking for, right? And really, it's because it's not what they're made for. It is pointing to something more. They're just not, the arrows point the wrong direction. So I think you're saying it perfectly in saying there's also a miscasting of it as an identity, whatever that excellence is, that we've got to figure out. We've got to sort that out so it doesn't kind of mistakenly take the place of something. So pursuing excellence is really good. It's not only good for our heart, it's good for our purposes, right? But it has to go beyond us and beyond the thing we're doing to really have its rightful place. And then I think to really then it can kind of give back to the company you're working for, to the relationships you're doing, because then people start to see that you're not this kind of one-dimensional creature, that you're beyond that. And I think that's the challenge too, is that when you have this kind of singular focus on excellence, no one can see you as a person.
Right.
They see you as this thing you do, right? I mean, nothing's weirder than seeing a pastor outside the pulpit. Like, who is this person? I don't know how to relate to them. Well, it's because you kind of identify them with this thing. The same is true of like a mother, say a mom. It's just everyone kind of whittles everyone down to that pursuit or that thing instead of we're much more complicated and complex than that. So it's good to pursue excellence, but we can't be defined by it or overuse it in a way too. So we got to be people at the same time. So I just love that there's some really good insight, Abigail, to saying, hey, let's protect ourselves from these kind of false identities. In our little world, we call them posers, right? So these false poses of what we aren't and actually being free to pursue it without it shackling us at the same time. Yeah. So really appreciate your thoughts today. Well, thanks so much for watching today's episode of C.A.R.s, Coffee and Christ, the podcast of Cross Automotive Royale here in Mounds, Oklahoma. And if you were helped by today's discussion, we hope that you'll like and subscribe to the podcast. We also hope that you'll go check us out online at crossautomotiveroyale.com. You're going to find there two things. One, if you're interested in car work and restoration, there are several ways that you can connect with us online at our website. If you're also interested in ministry work in partnerships, particularly to the car community, but also to minister to others in general, you'll find on that same website an additional website, carsfromchrist.org, and there you'll find our car clinic, opportunities to support you if you're a member of one of our member churches, and also find ways to donate vehicles or finances to help us donate vehicles to families in need around the Tulsa Metroplex. So hope that you will connect with us, subscribe to our channel, and hope to hear from you soon. Until next time.